There is Pete Wright, my guest today.
Hi.
Um, Pete Wright is a host of the. I can just completely slip my mind. That's just great. How appropriate. Taking Control, the ADHD podcast. He also hosts or produced other podcasts, and he is also a prolific writer of several novels, which we may or may not talk about today if he doesn't want to. We don't have to. But Pete, welcome to the show. Anything else you want to say about yourself?
No, I mean, that's I'm a hodgepodge, man. You got it. I do a lot of things.
That's cool. It keeps you busy, right?
Yeah, right.
So for folks who don't know or don't know all about it, I'm sure everyone's heard of ADHD. But for folks who don't really know what it is, could you kind of spell it out in short terms for everyone?
Oh, sure. Yeah. Attention deficit hyperactivity disorder. It is a spectrum disorder that relates to the way your brain handles signals that come in and out of it and your ability to focus and gate attention accordingly. And for some of us, that looks like hyperactivity, where your body can't sit still. Your body's always moving and has to be attended to often. And for some of us, it's inside. It's the inattentive, where it's not your body that's moving, it's your brain. Your brain is always moving in new and fascinating directions, and it makes it difficult to manage and gate your thoughts and ideas. And so somewhere on that spectrum exists the those of us who live with ADHD. And so we started this podcast. I started with this podcast with an organizing coach, Nikki Kinzer, and she's brilliant and wonderful. And it was a show about professional organizing because, I'm a nerd about organizing and I love to podcast, and she was helping people get organized. And she realized about, 2 years into our run, that the people she loved helping the most were people who were living with ADHD. And so she went back to school and learned everything there is to know about ADHD. And she ended up becoming a true asset and a coach, a certified coach for those living with ADHD. And our show pivoted hard in that run, and we just rebranded and became the ADHD podcast. And to help people figure out what are the living systems and that they need to help live their lives in a way that is better for them, and figure out what that looks like. And so we've been doing that for a long time now. 2010, I think we launched that show.
Oh wow, yeah. That's 9 years. There you go.
Yeah,
that's great. Yeah, I have ADD. I always grew up knowing ADD, and then they added the H in there.
Yeah. Yeah, you know what they did? They ended up just making the playground bigger. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like it once they realized that the hyperactivity applies to the body and the brain, and it's just, kind of a different set of results. Like it looks different, but it's really the same spark.
Yeah,
that keeps us all busy. Yeah.
Yeah, I don't think I was hyperactive as a child, but I definitely, have that
inside stuff.
Yeah, I know that inattentive stuff. I have trouble focusing on on writing. I have trouble following logical paths because my mind just won't stay on the same path. So I can't plot. So I discovery write all my novels. But my kids, they're all ADHD. And my daughter, you saw before we started the podcast, she came in and she's just all over the place. Oh my goodness. My poor wife.
It's so cute then, right? I mean, It's so cute at that age.
And very annoying.
She flips around.
Yes. Oh, she was in the womb. She was just like doing somersaults and stuff like that. That's
amazing.
What is she doing in there? Oh my goodness.
Oh, wow. That's fantastic. Oh, they should start diagnosing much earlier.
Yes. In the womb, in utero. Yeah. My poor wife, she doesn't have ADD, but she's had to deal with all of us having it. And she's very structured, but she's a champion, trying to give us, nutritional stuff and trying to, fish oil and trying to go gluten-free and all this other food stuff and trying to find programs that appeal to that whole mindset.
Right.
She's just done so great sticking through it all.
Have you noticed any sort of here? I'm going to turn the table. Have you noticed any sort of consistent behavior change in any of you as a result to dietary change?
Yeah. So we did the GAPS diet for a while. I don't know if you've heard of that.
I'm not familiar with that. No.
That is a gut and psychology syndrome, and the idea is that the because of antibiotics and chemicals in food and all this
Right.
other stuff, the good bacteria in your stomach is killed off, and there's only bad bacteria.
Hmm.
So what it is you go on this diet where you cut out grains, sugars, and starches, and then so you slowly reintroduce foods in your diet, and you see what triggers
Yeah.
it. Well, we did that. What the idea is that all this stuff causes things like ADHD, autism, eczema, which our oldest son had extreme eczema when he was 1 year old. We went on this GAPS diet, and within I think a year or 2 years, he was completely eczema free.
Yeah. Sounds like an allergy response.
Yeah, so we started doing that, but now he can eat those foods that were triggering him, and he's fine.
Interesting.
But when we started doing that, we noticed that, see, he's very emotional like I am, and I think that's linked to the ADHD. But when we started doing that, we noticed that his emotions calmed down when we cut out sugar as much, especially. So I think we have noticed that that difference in their behavior, and we're going to try to go no sugar again. But that's going to be a huge thing for my wife. I'm telling her, just don't
So
go
hard.
crazy. Yes, it's very hard because it's in everything.
It's in everything. And if
Yeah.
it's not in something, it turns into sugars in your body in a way that
Right.
whatever you eat, it's going to find its way to sugar.
Right.
That's really, really challenging.
Yeah, it is. But she's a champion for doing it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Brilliant.
Oh, completely forgot what I was gonna say. Okay, so as far as bring it back around to writing. So
Sure.
how is so you've written you told me written ghost written some novels, and you've written 3 novels. Go
Yeah,
ahead.
I've got three books right now for that I've written as a contract writer,
Oh, okay.
and that was a fine experience. Apart from the fact that I'm, as a contract, and my name's not on the books, and that
Yeah.
starts to wear on you a little bit,
Yeah. Yep.
And
Yep.
but it was a great experience, and I learned a ton as a result of working with the primary author, and I really relish that experience. And sometimes it's nice, it not to bring everything back to ADHD, but to work on these kinds of projects with experts. Like, it helps me focus, and like you say, if you can't plot, like, it helps to have a guardian angel there to help you. But because I have sort of, I guess, a strength in narrative and voice, and when you have a strength in narrative and voice and a very challenging time plotting, then it's all fluff. Like, there's nothing to it.
Yep.
So I have I had a good experience with those. I've also, I've, like every other writer, have a number of books in the drawer. I'm a big NaNoWriMo fan. Like, that's how I've started. Most of my projects over the last 16 years have started as a result of NaNoWriMo, because the drive, the deadline, it's that ticking clock, is something that it causes a lot of anxiety, and also allows me to leverage the kind of gamification of process that I need to keep moving forward, right? Okay, it's another 2,200 words today. I can do that. I can absolutely do that. They may be nonsense words. We'll figure that out in February, right? But November is for word count. And so, as you say, like, that's a great experience for me in terms of discovery writing, because it keeps me churning out, story, and I can filter okay later, but got to get that started. So I'm working on one right now. This is a motivator, because how old are your kids?
You got Gideon is see, they just had birthdays. They're all in the winter.
Yeah.
So Gideon's 10, Timothy is 9, and no, he's 8, and Gwendolyn is 4.
Okay. So this was new to me. This was a totally new experience. My kids are 12 and 16. And all the books that I've written, the literary fiction that I'd written before, I had written for an adult audience: action horror, action drama, and then the one I'm working on right now, I'm in the middle of, I don't know, it's like 75,000 words in.
Oh, that's good.
And I have this story that I've created. I finally have decided I'm going to write for my built-in audience, right?
Oh, there you go.
Every time I have new pages, I'm going to give it to my daughter and have her read it. And if she comes back to me and says, I would like to read more, then I will continue working on this project. So it's an adventure hero story, and it's got a trio of a little, it's like a Buffy the Vampire kind of Slayer kind of
Right.
a wonderful story of a little trio, a Scooby team that's kind of growing up in the world and trying to figure out what's next, and they have these accidental powers that they're discovering, and so I keep giving her, my iPad at the end of the day and say, here's what I've written today. And she, bless her, she keeps coming back and saying, hurry up, I'd like more. I'd like to read the next thing, please.
That's so awesome.
Hurry up. Yeah. And you know what? I find that stunningly motivating, right?
Yeah.
That is an enormously motivating thing. And I've never made use of that, like my built-in audience. So I guess I am now officially writing for age groups as my kids grow up. And they're gonna be adults, and I'll be right. That's when I'll have a built-in reader to take care of it. So it's been good.
Really awesome. Yeah. I started writing this superhero type of story. This girl who's got superpowers, and she's like, it's like the X-Men kind of. She's got physical mutation.
Mm-hmm.
She's got blue skin and tail, and she goes to this new high school where she's like the only one that's like outwardly a mutant and everything. Anyway, she winds up befriending this other girl who's mutant who has ADHD, and her friends just like her mind's just all over the place, but she's inventing all these cool things because she's got these powers. Yeah. But I sit down and I read this to my boys, and I read to them like a year ago, so they were like a little bit younger, but they just absolutely loved it. They gobbled it up.
Oh,
and yeah, and I polled some people online, and I told them premise, and they were like, oh, it doesn't sound like it'd be interesting, blah blah blah. But then my wife got on me recently and said, well, your kids enjoyed it, I enjoy it, so why aren't you publishing it? I'm like,
yeah,
that's a good point.
That's a good point, right?
Yep.
I mean, they're the ones that they're the ones that matter.
Yeah.
One, yeah. And as much as they can separate themselves from the fact that you're dad, and I talk about that, like that's my inner dialogue. Like I have to take a step back and say, okay, just because she likes it, is it because she's a critical reader, or is it because she's I'm dad? And she's actually she's a hard ass. She's tough on me when it counts and when it matters. And I realize like she's the one who's going to devour it. She's the one who's going to take it and share it. She's the one who's going to promote it, and when I say she now, it's like the capital royal she, like she's the one I'm writing this for. And there are so many she's out there that I want to connect with, like to build a strong foundation for hopefully a franchise that it continues to come. And as long as I'm being fed by it and she is feeding me and asking for more, I can't quite ask for a better combination.
Yeah, that is really awesome. Yeah,
I've never had that experience. Writing is so hard, but I've never really leveraged that. So I guess that's why I'm kind of leaning in on it.
Oh yeah, no, that's cool. You find something that's works and like amazingly well, and it's like, wow, I didn't even think about this before.
Yeah.
Yeah. So you said it's hard. Do you find it therapeutic at all? Like writing?
I guess I'm in the camp of, okay. I love the experience of sitting down to write.
Mm-hmm.
And I love the experience of getting up. Right. I adore, like, I have a real sense memory of both of those feelings. And everything in between those two, I sort of black out. Like, is it therapeutic? Not really. It just sort of is an existence, a gut-wrenching existence in time. And I struggle with everything from spelling to sentence structure, grammar, stupid commas. Like, it's all the stuff that and it's a funny thing when I sit down and write. I write a ton for my work, for podcasts. I write extensive podcast notes, show notes for all the podcasting I do. I have no trouble with that kind of copywriting. Like, I'll just churn that out all day long. But as soon as I sit down and I'm staring at a full page for a fiction piece, I go into just vapor lock. It's very hard for me to see. And that's kind of so do you ever watch New Girl?
I don't think I've heard of that one.
Okay, so it's the Zooey Deschanel show that was on for a long time. They just finished. They ended with a half season 8. I think it's been on for 8 years or so.
Oh wow!
And one of the main characters was a guy who just sort of never No, you never thought he would amount to anything. And right around season 5 or 6 or something, somebody discovered that he'd been actually writing a novel. And it was that old trope where it's this joke nobody has just written a book and he can't ever stop writing it because he doesn't know how to end it. Like he doesn't know where all he knows is the next thing. So it's like 3,000 pages long. It is giant epic book. It's one of the, like, I really connected with that show because everything else, like, I think narratively sort of started going downhill at that point in the show. But I loved him so much that and his journey, like I really connected with the wandering author thing. And so that's kind of what I feel like sometimes, where it's just, God, all I know is the next thing. And I don't know how to switch from that discovery mode to, holy crap, this has to end. Like now I'm literally running out of runway. Like I know that I want this to hit around 125,000 words. I am running out of runway for this book. Like I don't know how to, I don't know how to turn the corner. And so I hit that all the time in large projects. And I think it's a combination of just how my brain works and how they connect to my fingers that I just can't quite get over it. I am deeply enamored by those who go in more structured than I do.
Oh yeah, me too. I mean, like I said, I can't plot worth anything. I've tried a couple plotting methods, and that helped a little bit, but I can't just stick with it because I just find that I can write when I just sit down and write.
Yeah.
And I know for you it's not. For me, it can be very therapeutic. It's definitely work.
Yeah.
But it helps me to kind of get a stranglehold on my emotions and just kind of like wrestle them into submission when I do it. Yeah. My wife, she's a writer too, and she is definitely. She actually is in and she's in the live chat, and she says that she loves her glasses too.
Thank you.
But she's writing some nonfiction for struggling moms, and she likes to write fiction too, though. But she says yes, editing for fiction is so much harder than nonfiction writing / editing.
Yes.
Yeah. So she definitely resonates with you there.
Yeah. Well, and I look at these at the nonfiction work that I've done, and again, it's that whole experience. It was just so fluid. When you already have the story, it's just like the gates are thrown open. Yeah.
Yeah.
Then you can really get to the craft.
Yeah. Well, that's what my wife says. She says, I know if you can just plot it out, then you'd go a lot faster. I'm like, yeah, that would be
great.
I just can't do it.
That's really good. Maybe if you could put that on my tombstone.
Yeah. I'm gonna keep trying though. I'm gonna keep trying different methods and trying to plot them out. I watch a lot of writing stuff, and I listen to your podcast, and I listen to some writing podcasts and try to get ideas.
Where do you stand on, and I'm bringing this up because full credit where credit is due, the methodology is StoryGrid. Are you familiar with StoryGrid?
I've heard of it. I kind of know what it is, but I haven't really dove into it.
So this is Sean Coyne and Tim Grawl, and Sean Coyne is part of Black Irish Books, and that is it's a wonderful publishing house. He's a partner of Stephen Pressfield, and Steve Pressfield wrote War of Art. If you haven't read War of Art,
I've heard of that.
Oh my God. It is your like slightly inebriated uncle like telling you how it is, right? It's that you got some you're complaining about your art again, join the effing club, take a number, get in line. Like he just lets you have it,
Wow.
And he lets you have it in a way that's like slightly accosting, and yet I came away from that book transformed. There are a couple of books that I've read recently that I transformed. I'll get into that later. Going off in new directions. Anyway, StoryGrid is Sean Coyne is an editor of years and years and years, and he's worked with Pressfield and edited his books, and now he has worked diligently to distill the archetypes and the required scenes and the required plot points of the greatest narratives across all the genre. And he has put together this incredibly rich system that he calls the StoryGrid. And they've got a book and this podcast. Tim Grawl is this author, and he called Sean one day, as I gather it, and he said, "Hey, I'm writing a book. I would like to do a podcast with you in which you StoryGrid me through that book until we publish it." And
Wow.
it's been going for years, like 2 years, and he's on his final draft now. And
Wow.
every week is a story of him, having turned in pages to Sean and getting feedback on the work. And so at this point, I totally know the story, and I don't care because I can't wait to read the actual words on the
Right.
page. I am riveted by this podcast, and I have to say, I have learned an immense amount about, crafting story and structure, and through this, that's really helped me kind of over some of those turns that have heretofore been a challenge.
Wow. I'm going to, yeah, I'll have to look that up and start listening to that podcast. I know a few people have recommended it.
Worth it. And the book too is fantastic. Get the audiobook, it's great.
I probably should do the audiobook because I start to read a nonfiction book and I get sleepy and I can't focus. But yeah, no, I listen to a number of podcasts, but they're mostly marketing, and it gets wearisome because it's very technical sometimes, and it's just like,
yeah. Yeah, and there's so many things that there's a part, and I don't know. So tell me if I start lying here, but my experience is that if I go in and start, listening to marketing, book marketing, editorial marketing, whatever, podcasts and resources, I drown in those things and I drown myself out of my own writing. Right.
Yeah.
I drown myself right out of the creative process. And that's when the negative voices kick in. Oh God.
Oh yeah.
You can't, there's no way you'll figure out this marketing stuff. Why would you even bother writing a book? You dummy. Like, that's just step back until the books that are in your drawer, they're always going to be in your drawer. Get used to it. Let them ferment. Like, that's not a voice I want to listen to. Get out.
Right. Yeah. You got to cut out. And I'll do that sometimes. I'll listen to the podcast and I'll just have to stop listening to it for a while because I get so depressed about all these success stories, and like, oh, I did this and now this author's like selling 3,000 books a month. And it's like, oh, great. I'm selling one every 2 months or something, maybe.
Right.
Yeah. So yeah, I have to shut off sometimes. I've been listening to podcasts actually, except for yours, in like probably a few weeks because I've been just kind of drowning myself in an audiobook series.
You've got to go cold turkey. You really do. I agree with you. I mean, it's really hard and it takes some time. I think people don't recognize, like, just turning off the podcast is one thing, but like discovering what it feels like when the seeds take to fruit, right? Like, it takes a long time to reset and to figure out, oh, this is how my brain is supposed to work. This is what creativity feels like. It's for me, at least, I try not to speak too generally, but for me, it takes much longer than just, I'm going to turn off podcasts and things of this nature on Friday because Saturday I'm going to get to work.
Yeah. It takes time to come down from that stuff.
Yeah. You got to come down. Right. It's a chemical nuisance.
Oh yeah. My wife said something earlier today. She said it really good. She was like, oh, what was it? Maybe she'll pop in the live chat and say something. But she said, for people who are deaf, we sign with our hands. So, and if writers write with our hands. And she said a third thing that we do with our hands, and it's like we communicate with our hands. And it just kind of put on a light bulb for me because I was like I have trouble thinking of what to say. I'm socially awkward. I can't think of what to say. But when I'm writing, I'm texting, or I'm, doing whatever, I can communicate so much better. Piano. Okay, that's what she said. She said you do piano with your hands. So you're doing music with your hands and you're communicating through your music. And I'm wondering if that's just a creative thing, that creatives tend to communicate more through their hands than through their mouths. It's just like it's disconnect between here and here, but through here all the way to the fingers, it's like it flows a lot better.
That's interesting. So do you play?
I'm sort of dabbling. I've always wanted to play violin or piano, and we have a piano now, and our boys are learning. So I'm trying to fit in time to learn, but I have a full-time job. Plus, I'm trying to launch a writing career. So
right,
all that together.
This fantastic YouTube channel, right?
Yeah.
It's not like you don't have a lot going on. It's Gwen.
Oh. Say hi.
Hi, Gwen.
Okay, you go out now.
You remember me? I met you just a few minutes ago. Anyhow, that is a really interesting thing, and I play, and I
see the guitar back there.
I do. I play a little guitar and piano, and so we've got a piano out in the living room, and I don't play enough of it. And I think that is, I definitely notice that creativity is, it's tactile, right? It's like a high
Yes.
caloric activity. It's a burn,
Yeah.
and when and sometimes you just in absence of being able to create words, I have to create something, you
Yes.
know?
Yes.
And that may be a picture terribly, but more likely I'll sit down at the piano and I'll improvise for a half hour, an hour or something, and just feel exhausted
Yeah.
and rewarded afterward. I
Yeah.
totally get that. That's a great way to look at it. Your wife
Yeah.
is smart.
Oh, she is a genius. She's really smart. She's much smarter than me. Yeah, no, it's yeah, I'll do that too. If I'm I mean I should write and I try to make myself write. And I love writing. I can't get enough of it really.
Mhm.
But sometimes I just get lazy. But if I'm not writing, I'll want to be drawing or I'll come up with patterns for languages from my fantasy uh,
Sure,
world.
sure.
And sometimes I'll get on Minecraft and start just making stuff on Minecraft
Totally.
because it's that creation. It's just I gotta make something, and if I could draw, I'd be drawing too.
Yeah.
Yeah,
I struggle with that because I can't draw.
I can
It's
draw
such
that.
an aspirational thing for me. Like, I look at the art on the cover behind you and the poster behind you, and I think,
Yeah,
"Oh, I should be that guy." Like, there is a universe out there in the multiverse in which I am the guy who could do that.
yeah,
And I am that we are on the universe it's farthest from right now.
yeah. Yep, yep. I think if I could apply it to it. I could probably do not that, but
Yeah.
that's
That's
probably on my skill.
amazing.
I could probably sketch a decent character if I took the time to learn and applied it myself
Yeah,
to it, but then I'd be taking time away from everything else, and I just can't do
yeah.
that right now. So that's something maybe in the future. So with ADHD, how does that affect your writing? How do you work around that to like make yourself to like make a schedule for your writing, and how does that work with you and your schedule?
I have to work in sprints and in heavily gated times. So for me, and I don't know, I sometimes I get very nervous about talking about my experience with ADHD because it is, again, as a spectrum disorder,
Right.
it's a thing that is so different for everybody else, and the feedback that I get when I say certain things can be so negative from folks who are really struggling and don't have the same kind of ADHD that I do. So
Right.
I just want to say, as a, like, anybody listens to this who lives with ADHD, I get it, and it's just, we're different, and the things where I suffer are not where everyone suffers, and I recognize that, and I try to be as universally, like, acknowledge that universally as best I can. So all that said, the muscle that I've had to build is all around gating time. And when you look at my calendar on, my Google Calendar, every single minute of my day, I have this ideal calendar, and it's just completely yellow. It's a yellow calendar. It's
Mhm.
every minute, ideally, what should I be doing if I had complete 100% control of my time. And that
Uh,
includes sleeping and eating and family time and transitional time. It's just 24 hours, 7 days a week. It is gated. It's it's blocked. It's prepared. And then the rest of my day is spent trying to massage my actual commitments into that ideal schedule. And I've gotten to the point where I'm pretty good at it, right? I use Calendly for scheduling, so my clients schedule time with me, and there are times where they're not allowed to schedule time,
yeah.
and days that have to be blocked off, either because I'm doing other projects with other clients or because I need that time to write. So generally, I write. All to get back to your question, I generally write best in the morning, and I write in sprints. And so I have a little Pomodoro calendar app on, or a Pomodoro timer on my phone, and I just hit, start, and it rings when it's over. And I have a Zen timer on my computer too. When I'm writing on my computer, it's a tree that grows out of the bottom of my computer.
Oh, that's cool.
Right. And so it grows up out of the bottom of your screen. And then, so you set it for like 15 minutes, right? I'll do a 15-minute sprint,
Mhm.
and it'll blossom, blossom, blossom. And then fruit will appear and then fall off. And that's when the timer's up, and it says, "Oh, you're done." And then I reset it and do it again. And so that tree will come up and sprout 4 or 5, 6 times, and I'll know I've had a healthy thing. And each break is that cleansing break where I'll listen to 5 minutes of a podcast I like or something. I'm into The Illusionist right now with Helen Zaltzman, she just talks about the loveliness of words and language, and sometimes how stupid it is, words and language, and
Yep.
origins of phrases, and I delight in Helen's work, and so that'll be my like 5-minute between writing breaks, because it keeps me engaged in words, and then I'm back at it. I find most often when I'm at my best, it's when I am rigorously, zealously tied to those timers, even when I have something else to say. When the timer ends, my hands are off the keyboard, because I'll generally be able to pull more cycles longer throughout the day if I'm continuously stopping when I still have something to say. I think that was I don't know who said that, if Poe or Dickens or somebody, some angry drunk that to say, always stop at the end of the day when you have something left. That's my experience too. If I block 2 hours kind of at that in the first thing in the morning, I know that I'll be able to actually fill the 2 hours if I take zealously guarded breaks. I don't know. Am I answering your question? I feel like
No, you are. No, yeah, that's because that's instructive for me, because I want to learn how other people, excuse me, how other people do their writing methods, their writing schedules. I've had a couple of guys who are full-time, who have full-time jobs who do this.
Yeah.
And so I just kind of like gather information, try to see if I can apply it to mine. My schedule, like see, I can't be that rigorous with my calendar, because I've tried to do that and it just drives me crazy. I just get totally stressed out. So I try to like make sure I block off writing time, but then the rest of my day is like, okay, I want to do this task this day, and then I'll try to get that task done. And if anything else I can get done, then great, but I try not to be too strict with myself. But yeah, you said, about writing, because you said that you always leave a little bit left at the end of the day. And my wife was actually listening to your podcast earlier, and she said that you said that that way you come back and you always have something to write. And I assume you write notes or about whatever you have to write next, so that you don't forget or anything like that.
Yeah, I do. And I'll actually write it like that. Like, don't forget, Alia has to go back to the bank, or don't forget, Bemis is still naked in the high school. Like those kinds of, it's like I write those kinds of little notes. And so,
yeah, see, I can't, I mean, I'll do that sometimes, like, because if I'm over time and I have to get out to be with the family, I'll write a little note about, because I'm just on a roll and I don't want to stop. But then I might come back. I'll come back to the next day or the day after, and it'll be like, what does that mean? I don't remember what I was saying there. It just comes completely out of my head.
That's it's a funny experience. You bring that up, and that is a plague that I sometimes fall into if I get into that, and I'll start. I'll be like, oh God, what was I thinking there? And I'll go back a few pages, and then I'll go back a few pages more, and suddenly I've spent an hour reading my own work, and it feels like somebody else wrote it.
Yes,
like, I don't know who that guy was, but man, that was a rip-roaring action scene. Or
yes.
I don't know who that guy was, but he's an idiot who can't string 2 sentences together, right? Either way, It wasn't me. I would never take responsibility for this.
Yeah, that's one of the most fun things. This is the funny thing to say, but this is one of the most fun things about having ADD for me, is that I'll write something and then I won't go back to it for months, and then I'll go back to it and I'll think, oh, I stopped at this point, and then I'll see like 10 paragraphs more. I'm like,
who wrote that?
This is awesome.
It's like automated writing. The act of forgetting it allows it to feel like you have a system that takes care of all the writing for you. It's the ADHD sort of literary dissociative disorder, right? That it's that out of body experience that happens when you're just, I don't know where these hands go when I'm not, paying attention to them.
Yeah. It's just amazing.
Absolutely.
So are you going traditional publishing when you publish your novel, or are you going to be doing indie author? What's your plan there?
I'm an indie guy.
Yay.
I'm so I think it's as a podcaster and as you know, I've published two of the three contract books ended up being published, self-published, and one of them was went through a house, and the experience with the self-published was just so much more satisfying
Mhm.
and controlling. And even though, and frankly, we could do whatever we wanted. We could build our own strategy and do it. And the benefit that we got from the house was absolutely nothing. It was like, what? Why did they even say they wanted to show up to the party? Like they brought nothing,
Yeah.
and I was really unsatisfying. Now I know I'm not. I'm so far from the level of you know the kinds of resources that a traditional publishing house can offer,
Hmm.
and so as a result, I feel like the next book's going to stay indie, and I'm going to feel good about that. Um,
So do
because
you have?
I just like the control and I like and frankly, I think the other piece is I have all the skills of releasing a book self-published now. Right. I know how the systems work. I know how iBooks works. I know how Amazon works. I get it. And
Right.
I feel like because I have that benefit, it's something that, um, and that's not like rocket science. I mean, it's anybody can do that. Sometimes it feels completely, like a walled garden. You can't ever quite wrap your head around it if you're not some sort of a genius, but it's not, it doesn't require that.
Yeah. It's actually, yeah, it's a lot easier than people
Yeah.
think, I mean, there is the whole marketing aspect, and yeah, if you know how
Right.
to market well, you're going to do well. But it's not. I've even heard from authors I've talked to or listened to on the podcast, like, yes, this is very essential component of being a hugely successful indie author, but
Yeah.
it's not a necessary component. It's just
Right.
very, very, very helpful if you can do that.
Well, and some of the, I don't know, the stories that I like to latch onto, and I know that all stories are, come from are representative samples that are sometimes not representative.
Yeah,
But the stories that I latch onto and find most aspirational are the ones that, and the ones that make, I think, the most intuitive sense to me. It comes from authors who are churning out their original works self-published, and then they are discovered that way. It's those that have gone the route of building their own audience
yeah,
and activating that audience with consistent, workaday grind of new stories. And that's I sort of hang my hat on that because that's something I feel like I can do.
yeah.
And I'm excited to do. And if I end up getting picked up by a bigger house, I'll cover that one day. But this is so far outside of the realm of my reality. I'm still just I'm in it for the words.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I think that's important. I mean, it always needs to be to a major degree, not necessarily a complete holistic degree, but at least a major degree. It has to be a passion
Yeah.
of yours to follow it. I would say that for most people, but I think especially for people with ADHD, because it's just you do something that's you're not passionate about, and your willingness to do it just dies right there on the
Mhm.
table.
Yeah. Well, and it dies before you even recognize it was dead. Like, you
Yeah.
don't even feel it anymore. It just evaporates, and you're onto something else.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
I have a job where it's logistics, which is
Mhm.
really funny. But
That is really funny.
yeah. Yeah, I mean, I route trucks that go out to deliver food to companies, and so I have to, it's like
Yeah.
a giant puzzle each night, which is fine for
It
me. I
is.
kind of like
It's
it.
it's plotting.
Yeah, it is
Let's be
plotting.
honest. It's
It
plotting.
is. It's
Yeah.
plotting. But I have pieces to work with, and that's not just coming up
Yeah.
with it out of the air.
Get that. Right.
But I mean, there's days when I just go in and I'm just like, I do not want to do this anymore. I just hate this. I hate this so much. Fortunately, they're few and far between, but um, that's just my relationship with Jesus Christ and him driving me to do what I can't do. But off topic, but yeah, it's we're talking about passions, I think.
Mhm.
So but yeah, I mean that's not a passion of mine, and I'll even like take my breaks and I'll either read something I've written, or I'll try to get some words pounded out on my phone, just for whatever I'm working on at the time,
Mhm.
and that just kind of like calms me down and rejuvenates me and gets me ready to just go back at that non-passion thing again.
Right.
So Let's see what else. I you should see my hair. I'm gonna show you my notes. So crazy
Oh, excellent.
scribble notes. Yeah, yeah. It's so organized. Uh, wow, we covered a lot of stuff. Oh, what do you do when you get stuck?
Like right now?
Like right now.
Normally I walk away. Again, I'm at my worst. I don't walk away, and I'll sit and pound my head for hours and wonder why it's not working. And until something drags me away. Usually, one of my kids will get home from school, or I'll have to drive a carpool of some sort, and suddenly an hour goes by, and I realize, oh, I get it now. I remember. And so walking away invariably is the answer for me. Um, maybe not for everybody. I don't have any, tricks. I have a lot of fidgets. I have, there's a spinner, classic.
Oh yeah, there you go.
Red spinner.
Yeah.
I've got this. This is actually a dog toy, but it's one of those that's kind of a great like hand strength thing. And I have this like as a polished wood thing. All of these little fidgets and gadgets and things I keep all around. I got toys on the shelves behind me and stuff. Like sometimes I'll just go and I'll play for a while, and I'll try to get the brain going. I'll spin things, feel how long can I spin things, coins. I do that all the time. I find those are sort of meditative, if I can spin something like a top, and then I found this, I found this Kickstarter. So you remember Inception? You saw Inception?
Yes. Okay. I haven't seen it, but I know about it. Yeah.
Okay, so one of the gimmicks in Inception is this little top, right? Leonardo DiCaprio has.
Oh yeah, I've heard about that. Yeah,
it's a little fetish, and so he spins it to know if he's. Anyway, the top is important in that thing because when he spins it, if it spins for a long time, I don't want to totally spoil it. The length of time that it spends. So I'm going to go ahead and talk around it. You should see the movie because it's fantastic. The length of time that he spins it is important. And I found this Kickstarter that is awesome. And it's a top with a little tiny gyro in it. So and a little tiny battery, and you spin it and it will never stop spinning. It's a little spin for days. Yeah. So you can really punk people. And for me, you can punk yourself, right? That's why I got it. I was like, okay, I'm going to spin this top. And it's so easy for me, that dissociative part. Like, it's so easy for me to spin it now, even though I know the story and I know I bought a gimmick top that never stops spinning. I'm going to spin it and make that a thing that's going to help me sort of meditate on the nature of balance. And I'm going to spin it until I solve this problem. And that's not, that may not work out very well for me because I'll end up in like hyper-focus mode for 3 days.
Oh, there you go.
We'll see. We'll see. And I'll never solve any problems, but who knows?
Yeah.
But I'm very excited about it because it's one of my favorite movies and just a mind bender of a plotting exercise.
Yeah. Oh yeah, I'm sure.
Yeah.
Yeah. So you find that those fidget things, because I've considered those little fidget cubes. They got like 10 different things on them.
Yep.
I've considered getting those for me or for my boys. Do you find that doing that helps your brain to work better? Or
I don't like there's one that has the snappy things like buttons and stuff all over it. I don't use those, but there's another one I don't have it here. My kids must have it. We each got one, and it's like the infinity cube. So it folds once and then over again, and it's always folding into a new cube. And that it again, it's that repetitive motion that gets me. It's something I can put in one hand and I can do so, like invisibly. Right. I can do it over and over and over and over again. And that is the experience that helps me. I liken it to why I like working at a coffee shop, right? Some people can't work at a coffee shop. For me, I need to raise the level of signal in my brain to a point where my brain will turn on over it, right? It's like flooding the engine. You don't want to flood the engine, right? But you got to give it a little gas.
Right.
So that it'll turn over. And that's what I have to do. So when I occupy my hand, it's like there's just enough signal going to that hand that it allows me to kind of turn over the engine.
Okay. That makes sense.
I don't know if it makes sense, but it's how I look at it.
No,
you may be gracious there. I don't know.
Well, I often wonder about those things because I
Yeah.
thought about, because I fidget all the time,
Yeah.
and to the point that sometimes I guess not so much anymore. She's used to it, but it used to bug my wife or my mom. Or somebody bugged. But if I get a clicky pen, oh man, don't get near me because I'll just be clicking your ear off.
Yeah, yeah, right. And that's another thing. That's why I like these infinity cubes, the one cube or something. I'll have to find it. I like it because it's quiet. It's a
Ah,
thing that I can do under a desk or something that doesn't annoy somebody I'm talking to. I can do it while I'm podcasting. I can have this in my hand, and it doesn't disrupt people, but it keeps me kind of a little bit more on fire, a little bit more on edge. I also journal heavily, like I use the Day One app, and
okay.
I love it so much because the act of taking those sort of momentary reflections, just jotting a couple of words down throughout the day, in new posts that are just for me. I'm not great on social media, so like
Yeah.
just Day One is kind of the answer to my use of social media, and just keeping those reflections. It helps me stay present.
Hmm. Yeah. My wife has encouraged me to journal. I feel like I can't because I never really talk to myself. I talk to whoever's listening,
Mhm.
and I feel like talking to myself is useless because I'm already here. Not that it's useless for you or for anyone else. I think that's great if you can do it. My wife does it, and it helps her immensely. But for myself, it's just like I I work through my own thoughts best through narrative, and not even through just making posts on Facebook or in my blog or whatever,
Mhm.
but just through narrative. Like I have a really bad day at work. I'll come home and I'll just write this like 5 or 6 paragraphs of my story reflecting the emotions that
Mhm.
are all bound up inside me because of what happened at work. But I just can't. The journaling, it just feels like I'm spinning my wheels.
Well, I don't want to come to the defense of journaling because if it's one of those things. If it doesn't work for you, it doesn't work for you. But
Right, right,
I
right,
would just suggest the one thing that we've already talked about, that experience of dissociation when you come back to words that you've written and you wrote them, but it feels like a different person.
right.
That is illustrative, and for me, that's the experience I get more often than not when I come back to words I've written before. When I look at the little sort of summary posts, or look at the quotes that I've put in my journal, uh, I read those and I reflect on them, and I learn something about myself by kind of reflecting on who I was. And so that experience is what makes it worth it. I don't put 1,500 words a day in my journal, and I don't have a set of standard questions. Usually I'll just do a little bit of a dialogue of what did I accomplish today, what was kind of a high of my day, and where am I going to start tomorrow. And when I come back to those things, I usually learn something. I'm looking at one right now, a quote I put in my journal a few days ago that has really stuck with me to the point where I wish I could. I don't know. I want to like get a fracture made of it and put it on my wall or something. And it's from the Bhagavad Gita, and I'm not much of a student of the Bhagavad Gita, but I love this passage. It's better to live your own destiny imperfectly than to live an imitation of somebody else's life with perfection.
Hmm.
Um, that hit me, that hit me right in the feels. It's a it's one of those things, and I don't know where else I would put that kind of an experience, right? That kind of an experience with words. I don't know where else I would put it. Copying and pasting it into Day One has become a little bit of a ritual for me.
Yeah. Well,
So,
it's like you said, whatever works
yeah,
for
right,
each individual, and that
right,
works great for you. And
totally.
yeah. So, oh, I had something now.
I hear you, man. I hear you.
Yeah. Yep. um. Oh, so what do you do when like you have that? Like you need to put down these words or something, or you need to go and sit down and write, but you just don't want to do it. How do you motivate yourself to do that?
Well, I do it. I mean, I do it because in August of 2007, I quit my day job because I had believed in my heart of hearts that I could be a freelance creative and that I could create things for people for money. And there's a certain amount of terror that comes into that, and braggadocio and ego and all of those things. But at the end of the day, um, I don't have time not to sit down and write. You know, I don't have time to allow myself too much freedom to get buried in the I don't wannas. That's another reason that I have, that I work so much to this ideal schedule,
Mhm.
because that ideal schedule says, when you should be writing, when you should be, preparing for podcasts, when you should be developing new whatevers. And if I don't live to that, the whole house of cards falls down. I'll get mired in negative self-talk, and I'll let myself fall prey to what I like to think of as just sort of old me thinking, right? It's not like amateur thinking. It's like old me. Like, that's not who I am right now. I'm a guy
Right.
who makes a living and puts food in my kids' mouths by creating. And if I don't wanna, then I don't feed. Duh.
Yeah.
Yeah, it doesn't. That's one of those things I'd like to take back. That didn't cut sound.
Oh, it works.
That
Hey.
didn't even sound good in my head.
Wow. Yeah.
Right? You know what I mean, though? I mean, that's
Yeah. No. Yeah. I mean, you busy yourself
Yeah.
with things that you need to do, or like, you don't even think that, like, oh, I have to do this, but it's just like, okay, this is what's next.
Yeah.
This it's like I'm telling my boys, like, because sometimes they just really fight doing homeschool
Yeah.
and doing more work. And I say, you know what, this is what you have to do. You go into the work with this idea, okay, this is the time for the work. I'm not even gonna think about whether I don't want to do it or not. Just, this is the time to do it, and then when it's over, I'm done. And just go in it with that mindset. So if you have a day or calendar full of that stuff,
Mhm.
then that doesn't even give any room for that voice that says, I don't want to do this, because this is just what you got to do. That's basically what I do with my day job or evening job, because it's second shift. But that's basically what I do with that job. Is like, okay, this is the time to do this, so I'm going to go do this, and then I'm going to come home as soon as I can.
Well, and that lets you celebrate the end.
Yes.
You're a hero if you make it through that shift and you're in one piece and you feel good about things, and everybody, everybody that you scheduled arrived where they need to arrive safely, and it's a good day, and then you turn it off.
Yes.
Right.
Yes.
Move on to the next thing.
Yeah, people try to text me or call me after work. I'm like, nope, not answering.
Nope.
Nope. I'm home now. Forget you.
Right. That's right. Yeah, that's a funny experience, but I totally feel that. Like, that's the experience of being able to say, I'm working on this thing. I'm not going to allow myself to be bothered, and there's because it's important. This is what I've prioritized. I've done the work prioritizing. This is what I was going to say, that the ADHD for me, it everything I do is a race against distraction. And so if I have an intention to do a thing, like, I look at distraction as a guy like next to me, and he's like faceless, but he carries around a starting block. You know what I mean? Like, he's just casually kind of hanging around. And as soon as I start something, he's down in starting position, and he's like ready. He's ready to take me on. And if I don't get to where I need to be, if I don't accomplish that goal, it's usually because he got out just a little bit ahead of me, and he caught my eye, and he dragged me that way. And even when he drags me slightly off center, in 15 minutes, I'm that much further off center. Like, it's that much harder to get back to it. So I have to be rigorous about that schedule. I have to be rigorous about starting and stopping, or else that guy's going to get just a little bit ahead of me, and he's going to drag me away.
That's a great visualization. That's really kind of like codifies. It really brings together, like, the whole idea of distraction, and helps you to, like, fight against it, because you can visualize it.
Yeah.
So as far as distraction goes, do you, like, use a certain, like, writing app that eliminates your distraction, or do you just use Word, or what do you use besides the tree?
No, I don't use Word. I use, for a while, I was using Scrivener, which I found is as overkill on features and bells and whistles as
so I've heard
as Word. And so I went to, I said, how can I dumb this down further and make it a pleasant experience? Like, it's got to look better and feel better than, like, text edit. But it's got to be able to pull back, all of this stuff. So I ended up on Ulysses, and I adore Ulysses. Every bit of written word that I have now goes through Ulysses, whether it's a grocery list or a novel. It all starts with Ulysses. And the novel case I love so much because, you know, novels are simple. The formatting is simple. And so I live in Markdown. And when it comes time to print out, to publish a novel piece as an EPUB, an electronic book, I can do it right in Ulysses, render it out as a single file, attach it, send it to my daughter. She opens it up in iBooks and reads it as an ebook.
Nice.
And I mean, it's just that is such a fluid workflow for me to get drafts out to people who are important to me that I want to read earliest drafts. You know, of course, it renders out in PDF or Word or, you know, HTML, whatever you want to do. But for me, just having the addition of being able to do that quickly and easily, write in chapters, turn on goals for each chapter if I have writing goals or word length goals. I live it. I live in Ulysses and on my phone and my iPad as well. It's kind of that. It's everywhere.
Yeah, that's awesome. Yeah, the author that I have been conversing with, Kevin Tumlinson. He writes thrillers. He's also the marketing director for Draft to Digital. But he used to use Scrivener, and he actually uses Ulysses. And he swears by it.
Yeah, convert.
Yeah. Yep. That's a Mac only program, isn't it?
It is Mac only. Yeah. And I know it's so good and so beautiful. And the typography is so good. And I just, sorry. I don't know why I'm apologizing. It's not my fault, but
no, it's not your fault. I blame you, Pete Wright. Macs are our family's long-term goal, I think, because we are just so sick of Windows. Right now, actually, I'm on Ubuntu because I have Windows 10, and it just makes my videos so slow. So I had to dual boot into Ubuntu to do this.
That is bananas how far we've come, that you're dual booting into Ubuntu because Windows makes your video too slow.
Yes. Yes.
What? Oh man.
Yeah. If I didn't need it for Word because I write in Word, I would probably not even use it.
Yeah.
It's just so
well. Why do you write in Word?
That's just what I've kind of grew up using.
Yeah.
So, and I've dabbled with a couple other things. I could afford Scrivener, but I haven't spent the money to get Scrivener yet. It does seem like it's like an overwhelming, too many.
The thing about Scrivener, what is brilliant about Scrivener, and the nonfiction pieces that I've done, the books I was paid for, I did in Scrivener, and it was brilliant because it allows you to sort of dual wield your writing space and your research space, right? And it is amazingly useful and sensible when it comes to maintaining a large library of research sources right next to the words that you're actually writing. And so I really love that. But for fiction, I get so distracted by binders and folders and output objects and things like that. I just can't. I have to. Again, Scrivener is that guy, and he's right here, and it doesn't take him long to lead me down that path. So,
yeah. See, I've heard about that, and I have interested in trying it out, you know, and so I may eventually do that because my wife's interested in it too.
Yeah.
But Word, it's been good enough for me. I mean, I can do whatever formatting I need in it. There's actually an option I haven't tried out yet, but I heard on another podcast that you can actually rearrange chapters just like you can in Scrivener with Word.
Yeah, true.
But you know, I haven't been distracted by the things in Word because they're all tools that I can or cannot use, and it just didn't distract me. I've heard people use Google Docs. I don't like putting my stuff on Google necessarily. I've heard people. I saw this one program called WriteMonkey, and it's just a blank page, nothing else, and it's just text. And I love the simplicity and the clean surface of that. But I like to have those tools handy where I can just click formatting like italics, bold, page break, whatever. You know, I like to have those handy. So that's why I use Word. It just
have you ever explored Markdown as a writing tool?
No, I think I've heard of that. Is that
so? Well, originally Markdown was a it was written originally as it's like a scripting add-on for writing tools by John Gruber behind DaringFireball.net, and he wrote it because he wanted a quick way to write in plain text but achieve the same sort of formatting that you're talking about, right? To be able to do links and italics and headings and all those things. Right. but to do it in a way that is text readable. So if I write a Markdown document and I put it in an email as Markdown and I send it to you, it doesn't look like anything other than text, right? Headings are like an
Right.
H1 heading is a £, and H2 heading is unsurprisingly
Oh, that's right. Yeah, I did
£.
hear about that.
Yeah. Bullets are just dashes, like all of them. It just looks like a text thing. But when you pass it through a Markdown parser, it allows you to preview it and see it and export it with rich formatting. So it interprets all of that. And so you know exactly what you're getting. And for me, what I found is, like, as I'm typing along, if I want something in italics, I use the brand of Markdown where I just do underscore and then the words in italics and underscore, and that's italics, right? And that's how Ulysses sort of works. So your fingers never leave the keyboard. To do all the formatting you want, all the live long day, right? Bold,
Nice.
italic, strike through, underline, whatever you want, and you can do it without your fingers leaving the keyboard. And that for me was huge. Add on the parts about the HTML related stuff, quotes, block quotes, footnotes, all of those things that you can do in Markdown, and not have to worry about file format changes year after year after year, right? So all of my work is in plain text. Like, you can open it in Word, you can open it in whatever you want.
And this is a sort of program, or is this an?
No, honestly, it's just a skill that you learn, right? You just
Okay.
learn Markdown, and then you pick an app that is Markdown ready and start writing in Markdown. And for me, Ulysses brand of Markdown, it's a little bit of a, it's a little bit of a variant of the original Markdown. But there are all kinds of apps that have been written with Markdown support. And as long as it has Markdown support, you can type in Markdown and it will interpret what you write
Nice.
as you write it. It's lovely.
That's awesome. I'm going to explore that.
Yeah. It's just made me, again, in the spirit of reducing friction, because friction leads to distraction. That has been a thing that has helped me.
I'm going to check that out. Thank you.
Yeah, it's worth it.
Yeah. Well, we're come up on time, so appreciate you coming on. The show has been a delight.
Luke, it's been terrific. I am deeply honored that you would even want to talk to me. So believe me, whatever time you need, I had a great time.
Oh yeah, I mean, I listened to your show, and I wouldn't say at the beginning I went off the deep end, but but I when I started looking for podcasts on ADHD, I found a couple. I found one. It was like The Mountain and the Wolf or something like that. And it was this guy talking, oh, we need to explore our feelings that are deep inside this. I'm like, okay, I don't know what you're talking about, dude, but it's out there. And then
that sounds scary.
I know. I don't know what that guy was talking about, and then there's another one that was like, it was very like militant and very serious. I was like, okay, I don't need that. And then I found you guys, you and Nikki Kinzer, and you guys were just laughing, having a great time, but you were relating good, solid information, and you were just really taking that lighthearted, like, approach, like, you know what, yeah, this is here and we're dealing with it, but it doesn't have to be crushing your life. And that's what I needed, and that's been a real blessing to me. So extend my thanks to Nikki too for your guys' podcast. It's been huge.
I will absolutely do that, and I thank you very, very much. It means a lot.
Yeah. Well, why don't you tell people where you can be found online and what your books are called, if you have any published right now, or if what you plan on publishing, whatever information you'd like to give.
Yeah, I'll just tell you, head over to, if you want to see the podcast, if you want to see Taking Control, it's at takecontroladhd.com. That's Nikki's site, and the podcast is there. You can find all the other podcasts that I do at rashpixel.fm. That's rashpixel.fm. And another podcast, if you're into the ADHD type stuff, another podcast you may be interested in, and I make no promises. It's called What's That Smell? Sometimes it's a sometimes funny podcast about humans and their anxiety, and if you live with anxiety, you know that sometimes you don't like to talk about it, and it's not very funny. And so I have another friend who's a screenwriter in Los Angeles, Tommy Metz, and he had just finished writing and directing his first feature film called 30 Nights, which hopefully it's got a distribution deal, but it's not out yet. So be on the lookout for that. It's an adult kind of sex comedy that's hysterically funny. And we both live with stupid anxieties, like a lot of them. And we decided, let's talk about them and see if we can make people or help people laugh with us.
Yeah.
And so we only do short seasons, 12 episodes a season. We're recording season 3 right now, so it's easy and binge worthy. And you know, if you're into such things, it's a fun way to go. And be on the lookout, because working title Alia in the Wind is my next book, and I'm crashing through it. So
awesome.
It's on the way.
Look forward to reading
and
it.
there is a naked kid in a high school, so that's not bad. I'm gonna hang that out there.
Just put my nightmares right in the book. Go ahead. Well, I appreciate it, Pete. Thank you so much. You, everyone who came out and hang out in live chat, thank you for coming. And just keep on writing and keep reading. Oh, I'm trying to use my mouse. It's not connected. That's really good.